Hi, welcome to the Get Ready with God podcast. My name is Julie Taylor, and I am your host, and I am not God. Obviously, I'm not a scriptorian or an expert or any of those things. I'm literally just a girl sitting in front of a microphone, hoping God is real. The Get Ready with God podcast is the daily devotional podcast to help you see divinity in every day. Let's talk about truth. You thought I was going to say, let's talk about sex, baby. Not today. Maybe tomorrow, but not today. Today, I'd like to talk about truth. Sometimes you might hear the phrase, often in our culture, things like, I'm living my truth. These phrases can be controversial because there are people who believe that truth is not subjective. They believe that you can only have one truth because truth is truth. So it's either true or it's not. And I have debated this at length with many people in my life. And I do think there is a version of this that is really weaponized to make people justify and validate whatever they want to be true. And to that, I say, you can do whatever you want. I'd like to remind everyone that you can do whatever you want. You're a grown up and you can do whatever you want. And you might say, no, I can't because no, it's still a choice. It's still a choice. You might choose not to do something because you don't like the consequence or you don't like the cost of it, but you actually can do whatever you want. But so I do think that is a problem culturally of using truth and my truth and subjective truth to validate and defend whatever you want to be true. And I don't think that we can just claim things and be like, well, that's my truth, so it's true, so it's real. And what is the difference between truth and experience and realities and perceptions? And I mean, we could get really existential really quick. But this is something that I've been thinking a lot about. And I've always thought a lot about because that black and white thinking of this is the truth, you either have the truth or you don't. Those extremes are something that kept me out of faith for a really long time because I couldn't find peace with either one. I couldn't find complete peace anywhere. And so it's actually the thing that made me leave faith and the thing that brought me back to faith is the fact that I could not find absolute truth on either side. And so there were parts of faith and a belief system and God that I couldn't explain and couldn't make peace with, but there was also pieces of things I could not explain or understand when I didn't believe in God too. So the actual same gray area both brought me away and brought me back. And I think that's an important thing to articulate because the same thing that takes one person away from God might be the same thing that brings someone back. And so this is why truth is tricky for me because there's a lot of things that I don't think we get to have an opinion on. Like if I say this is my experience, therefore this is my truth, how can you combat that? Because you don't know what my experience is. But maybe we're misusing the word truth and experience isn't the same as truth. It's really fascinating to me. But one thing that I believe to be true is that black and white isn't the highest form of thinking and that finding peace and fulfillment and curiosity in the gray is actually an invitation to so much more and such an expansion and so much more understanding that it's really exciting actually to be in the gray. It feels scary and confusing, but it's actually really exciting. Black and white is very narrow. There's one point that's black and there's one point that's white, but everywhere in between is gray. So there's a lot more to explore, a lot more possibilities, a lot more invitations. It's fun. So when we think about truth, two things. One, there's the parable of the elephant, right? The blind men and the elephant. That's that parable where like you bring blind men to an elephant and one man says, oh, it's a snake. And another man says, it's a tree. It's because they're touching only one part of the elephant. And so if you just touch the trunk, you might think it's a snake. If you just touch the leg, you might think that it's a tree. Like whatever one piece of the whole you're exposed to, you will think that's what it is. And so it's not that these blind men were wrong. I mean, they were wrong. It's an elephant. It's not those things, but they couldn't see the whole. They were only exposed to this small piece. And so I think about that a lot in faith because I don't think, and maybe this is a hot take, I don't think that any human on earth has the whole elephant. I don't think anyone is working from the whole elephant. And so for all of us to obsess so much over truth and this is truth and this is truth and I know it and I have a hard time believing any of that because God is the elephant and I don't know that any of us, I don't know, maybe someone does, but in my experience, I have a hard time believing that any human perspective has the whole elephant right now. And I think the reason that we get debating is because someone has the trunk and someone has the foot and those are both real and true to them. and neither one actually has the whole elephant. And so there are true aspects of what both of them are experiencing, but no one is representing the whole truth, the whole elephant. And so what it leads to me, is a competition for God and a fixation on being the most right or the most true or exclusively right or exclusively true. And that's just never resonated with me, because I think we all have pieces of the elephant, and I think God never leaves. And I think God is found everywhere, and divinity is in every single thing on this earth, because divine creation is all around us. And so to claim exclusivity on faith or exclusivity on God is inherently wrong to me. And so when we say what is truth, and I have the truth and what if none of us do and we all have pieces? And what if God is everywhere? And what if divinity is everywhere? And what if we are having different experiences, therefore experiencing different versions of truth? What if we stop competing for God? What if it's not a competition? What if we don't need to win? What if we don't need to be the most true or the only true? What possibilities does that open up? It's similar to living in the gray area, where maybe it's a little bit harder. Maybe it asks more of us because we crave control and certainty. And so to be able to let go of control and certainty and say, maybe there's some things that we don't know yet or don't understand or are different than we think, that can be uncomfortable and it can feel like threatening, but it's actually an invitation for such a bigger, more diverse, inclusive, beautiful experience with faith. And so until we have the whole elephant, maybe let's stop competing for God. We don't need to compete. It's not actually a competition. God has capacity for everyone. I'm not actually fighting against you to be more loved by God, to be more seen by God, to be more noticed by God, or for God to be prouder of me than he is of you. That's not actually a competition that we're in. Faith should not be a competitive space. We're all working from the same elephant. We just can't see the whole thing yet. So getting caught up in being the most right or the only right, getting caught up in owning the truth and the only truth, I think pulls our focus away from the beautiful reality that there's enough God to go around, and that faith operates on attraction, not promotion. And so if there's a way that I'm experiencing faith or living out my faith that draws someone to me, that's actually like God's light through me, right? It has nothing to do with me. But then maybe you and I could get in a conversation of like, well, this is how I've experienced faith and this is what I believe. And maybe it's different for you, but I believe that God will always work through attraction, not promotion. And there's enough to go around. I think High School Musical really had it right when it said we're all in this together, truly. Faith is faith. God is God. We have different experiences and interpretations, but there's nothing to compete for here. What a relief, huh? What a relief to not need to be the most right, the only right. What a relief to not be in competition with each other. What if we're just all trying to find the whole elephant? We all have our piece, and when we bring all our pieces together, the elephant becomes more whole. We start to see clear. We start to see the whole picture. That to me is why it's so fascinating to bring together things like faith and quantum physics. Because I believe that one day all of this will make sense through seeing the whole elephant. And so I think that all of these spiritual things that seem immaterial and elusive or hard to understand or inexplicable now, well, one day I'll be explained. And I think science is a big part of that. And I think that emotion is a big part of that. I think humanity is a big part of that. And that's exciting to me. So yes, saying I'm just living my truth to defend bad behavior or harmful actions, not great. It's not a good look. Let's not do that. You don't need to validate bad actions. Okay? We don't need to validate bad behavior. Anyway, what is true? Lots of things. Where is God? Everywhere. We're on the same team, baby. Let's play together. Let's do an assist to make that basket. I don't know. I don't really know sports language. Touchdown pass? Is that one? I don't know. Love you so much. Bye.